Are there any kind of like trends that businesses should kind of be looking out for as far as the tariffs?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say that the most important thing is to understand your business, your good, your customers, and your suppliers. And I think we'll talk a good amount about what the strategies there are. But it's really, really important to understand, what you are producing and if it's subject to a tariff. And what's happened actually is after the initial imposition of tariffs, and this understanding that USMCA compliant goods would not be tariffed, there were a lot of Canadian producers who were selling to their US clients, and then they'd get a call when the good would get to the border, and the client said, "Are you aware that your good is subject to a 25% tariff?" And the producer would say, "Well, no, I'm USMCA compliant, at least I think so." And it turns out that they hadn't filled out the paperwork to become compliant. So there's been a lot of that.
Yeah.
So this year we've had a trend in this increasing compliancy. So it's really good. We're increasing the compliancy levels, but we're still below the level that we need to be at. So the estimates are, in April, roughly 60% of our trade with the US went under USMCA. We still have some room to go. So that's one of their big trends, is that businesses are signing up professionals, cross-border professionals, in order to say, hey, what kind of paperwork do I need to fill out? What do I need to do so that I can become compliant and then get into free trade and not have to pay this, or that my customer doesn't have to pay?
Is it a relatively complex process to do that, or is it somewhat simple?
It's somewhat simple, but let's be honest, business owners are overwhelmed.
Yeah,
very busy people, right?
Hard to keep up with what you need to do sometimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's just simply finding out what you need to do can sometimes take days or even weeks. So one of the things that we suggest to our to small businesses to do is to build a task force within your company, your firm. Say, okay, let me find 2 or 3 people who I know are in the news, who are plugged in, who are great at researching, who can leverage AI maybe, and say, guys, tell me what it is. Let's find out what's going on, and then ask for help. Get them to figure out, okay, look, this is what we need to do to become USMCA compliant.
Right.
So that's something that we're seeing more and more in companies.
And are there any like common misconceptions people have about tariffs, or even just like trade policies in general? Yeah,
so I'd say one common misconception, I think I'm really glad that you looked at the camera and you told them exactly what tariffs are, because there are certain sources that say that the buyer doesn't pay the tariff.
Right.
It is absolutely the case that the buyer is on the hook for the tariff. So I think that's really needs to be clear. But I would say that within that, it doesn't mean that the buyer has to bear the full burden of the tariff. In fact, that's often not the case, because there can be some arrangement between the buyer and the seller of saying, look, if there's a 25% tariff, how about you absorb some of it and I absorb another? So this idea that, that person is going to have to pay the tariff when they take possession of the good at the border, but there's ways to manipulate your price in order to make sure that burden of the tariff is shared, and that can enable you to continue your business relatively uninterrupted.
Okay.
Can you share more advice on how businesses should navigate this situation right now? Are there any resources or strategies they should be leveraging more?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't mention BDC, but not because I have to, but because we have really great resources. So www.bdc.ca/tariffs.
Perfect.
Yeah.
We'll leave a link to that.
Links below.
Please click it.
Really, it's a tremendous resource. So we have a lot of articles that really cater to supply chain, to managing your finances, to resiliency, how to position yourself in this sort of situation. We also have a tool there which we've developed with the Canadian government and with Export Development Canada called the Tariff Tracker, that can allow you to type in your good and figure out, am I subject to a tariff?
That's super useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it works really well. So there are a lot of online resources, but the BDC website really does a good job at bringing it all together. And you can find a lot of the articles, and I'll talk about some of the advice that we have in there. But of course, I can't go as in depth.
You can link it to us, and then we'll put it down in the description box.
Nice. So I'd say that probably one of the things I'd really like to highlight is this idea that the planning horizon has changed. So traditionally, in a stable business landscape, short term is 1 year, medium term is like 2 to 3 years, long term is 3+. But with all of these disruptions, and also as the pace of technology accelerates and media attention and news disclosures accelerate, we're seeing that planning horizon is being condensed. Months become weeks, years become months. So now our experts in supply chain are telling us, look, short term is really 30 days. It's out to 30 days, maybe 2 months. Medium term is like 3 months to 6 months, and then long term is 6 months plus. So in the short term, what you need to do is control everything that's at arm's length.
Yeah.
You know, anything that's around knowing your customers' needs, knowing your suppliers, understanding where your inputs are coming from and how subject you might be to tariffs, knowing the customers that you're selling to, if they're worried about the current situation, understanding your finances. So we talk about the L's and the P's. So we talk about liquidity, which is your cash, leverage, which is your debt. And then on the other side, we talk about productivity, which is you're controlling your costs, and profits, which is how to maximize your revenues. Right. So those are 4 things to really keep an eye out on, because right now, even if your business is not directly affected by the tariffs because you're not an exporter or you're not importing a good, there are knock-on effects. There are a lot of people who are second degree affected by tariffs, and they might not even know it until they get a bill from their new supplier that says, hey, my cost has gone up by this amount of percent because I'm paying a tariff. They might not even be aware of that. So understanding, you know, your exposure throughout different supply chains is probably the number one piece of advice that I'd give people.